Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series, Can We Save the Oakland A's? And want to start off today's episode by thanking all of our loyal viewers. Longtime viewer and frequent commenter Stanley Rosella noted that we just passed our 1,000th episode on this channel. I thought we were getting close, but I didn't think we were quite there. So unfortunately, I won't be able to do a special episode to celebrate that 1,000th episode since it's now past us, but appreciate everyone who's supported the channel over the past few years. And if you're watching or listening and you haven't subscribed, would appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, keep watching our videos if you enjoy them and sharing your thoughts with us in the comments. This 2041 season is off to a pretty good start for our Oakland A's as we're trying to win back-to-back championships for the first time with this team. And if we're able to win this year, that would give us 4 of the last 6 World Series titles, 33-20 record, and we are 5 games up on the Los Angeles Angels here in the American League West. But some pretty significant issues that we're dealing with now. Our ace, Jesus Saldana, just went on the IL with a torn UCL. Obviously, the 60-day IL for an injury that's going to keep him out for the next year. So after a 7-2 record and 3.39 ERA to get the season started, he is out for the season. And our number 2 starter, who led the American League last year with 21 wins, Doug Weiss, has pitched only 3 games for us this year, bicep tendonitis, and his return right now is uncertain. We talked a lot about this past off season, our depth in our pitching staff, and the reason we were able to move on from a couple really big pitchers in Chase Dora and Mike Gallick. And even with the injuries to Saldana and Weiss, with Arriola, Comunez, Blumenshine, and Baumler, we still like the top 4 guys in our rotation. We are, for the time being, going to move Kevin Carmichael into the 5th starter role. Hopefully Weiss will be back in the not-too-distant future. Carmichael, a reliever who's been with us for the past few years now after we picked him up in a trade with Toronto, does have a 3.5 pitch arsenal, does have decent stamina. And, his stuff is a bit above average, movement a bit above average, and average control, a more than acceptable number 5 starter. But if we get Weiss back, although losing Saldana is certainly not optimal, would feel pretty confident heading into the postseason when we're only going to need 4 pitchers in the rotation with Weiss, Arriola, Comunez, and likely Blumenshine in the rotation. We saw at the end of the last episode that our relievers have been disappointing this year, and we have given chances to a lot of youngsters this season. Not going to go in great depth in the statistics since we'll be doing our annual midseason review with a deeper dive into how everyone's performing at the end of this episode. But Blade Staff, Paul West, Peter Hooper all kind of noted the injuries that we've been having. The most significant the injuries we've been happening, they noticed, but they also noted the struggles that we've had with the bullpen. Wilson Rangel, who's the number 25 prospect in baseball, is optically the biggest defender right now. A 6.86 ERA and a 1.83 WHIP, both of which are ridiculous. Even more ridiculous is his 4.52 BABIP against him. That being said, he's striking out 11.4 batters per 9 innings. He's got a 5-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. His Sierra of 2.79 is more than 4 runs better than his actual ERA. And he's actually been above replacement level over the course of this season. So although certainly his performance isn't great, Jake Mendick, who's been hurt, also has a high ERA, and you can see a lot of other guys with ERAs in the mid to high 4s. When I look at the talent of our bullpen, I tend to think things will normalize over time. And as we sit here on June 1st with a 12th ranked bullpen ERA of 4.74, my hunch is when we check in again in early July, when we do get to the midway point of the season, or perhaps it'll be late June when we get to the midway point of the season, that we'll be ranked higher than we are today with a bullpen ERA that's lower. If things don't work out that way, we'll also be closing in on the trade deadline, and certainly think that we have the capabilities to bring some help for the bullpen on board through the trade market if that's what we decide we need to do. And we'll check in quickly on the two primary starters that we moved on from this offseason. Mike Gallick was with us for just 26 games last year. Traded him away to San Diego, 5-3 for the Padres, but with an ERA of close to 5. Certainly a very useful major league pitcher with the profile that he has, but given the fact that he's making $10 million this year and we were a bit light on money, and more importantly, given the fact that pairing him with the reliever Daniel Blanco allowed us to get Luis Villarreal, the number 38 prospect in baseball, in return, gives us a guy who we hope will help replenish our rotation in the not too distant future. The left-hander Villarreal, 4-2 with a 2.98 ERA and 12.7 strikeouts per 9 innings in A-ball for us this year. And we have just recently promoted him to high A-ball at the age of 21. Not inconceivable that Luis will be pitching in Double-A before the end of this season. And the other big-time starter that we let go for salary reasons this past off-season was, of course, Chase Dora, who signed a big 5-year, $117 million deal with, of course, the Dodgers. He's 2-3 with a 3.53 ERA, a 1.2 WAR on the season. So as always, Dora, a good, solid number 2 or number 3 starter type at the major league level. Speaking of the Dodgers, oh my God, come on. Between Yamamoto and Ohtani and now Sasaki, are any Japanese players actually allowed to sign with somebody besides the Dodgers? The Dodgers have some kind of incriminating pictures of every baseball player in the history of Japan. This is getting ridiculous. But it is positive from one perspective as a Yankees fan, because I think pretty much every baseball fan outside of Southern California is going to be united in their hatred of the Dodgers for what they are doing to the finances of this game, if they aren't already in the not too distant future. But even more importantly than the Dodgers adding Sasaki into their organization, though, is obviously the devastating wildfires in that area that have been going on, and certainly send our thoughts and prayers to everyone who's been impacted by those horrible wildfires. And although we're not thrilled with the Dodgers as a baseball organization right now, because they are creating a true all-star team from top to bottom of their roster, obviously feel greatly for everything that the people in Southern California are going through right now, and any of you who happen to be impacted, wishing you the best with this really devastating situation. Turning our attention back now to our fictional baseball team here in 2041, ranked 4th out of 30 in the latest power rankings. As you saw when we looked at the screen with our team statistics, we were barely above 500 in the month of May. Have definitely had a fair amount of injuries this year, and certainly not getting any better with Saldana gone for the year at this point. But the offensive players are healthy now. Hopefully we'll be getting Weiss back soon, and the hope is that we continue churning along here in the month of June. And our A's have kind of been doing what our A's do over the first 10 games here in the month of June. 6-4 record, 600 winning percentage. So much worse than we were in the month of April, but better than we were in the month of May here thus far. Do have some good news. Doug Weiss is finally back from that bicep injury. Since he's been out since early April, missed a full 2 months. Probably going to have him take at least one start for us down in AAA, if not two, before we bring him back up to the Major League roster. But certainly will be good to get Weiss back in the next week and a half to the Major League level. And we'll probably give Weiss a second start down in AAA. Did give us 52 pitches yesterday, but they certainly weren't the highest quality 52 pitches with 4 hits, a home run, and a walk over 2 1/3 innings. Certainly think we'll try to stretch him out to 75 or 80 pitches next time around, and then hopefully he'll be ready to join us back with the big club after that. And we've talked a lot in the previous episode about the monster season that the young first baseman / catcher Jonah Richards is having this year. He's been AL Rookie of the Month in both April and May. Finally figured out the only thing that might be able to stop him, suspended for 4 games following a bench-clearing brawl in our win over the Mariners. So Richards will be out for the next 4 games, having an outstanding rookie year. The batting average has dipped to .278, but he still has 16 homers and 48 ribbies in just 237 at-bats, putting up a 147 WRC plus for our Oakland Athletics. And he is still viewed as the top prospect in all of baseball, and we signed him to a long-term extension before this season got underway. And as we're closing in with a 45-26 record on the midway point of the season, things still going well for our Oakland A's. 5.5 game lead over the Angels in the division. Our longtime nemesis, the Texas Rangers, are in last place at 27-43. Our 45-26 record is the best in the American League, and behind only the Colorado Rockies by 1.5 games for the best record in all of baseball. So that is the really good news. Unfortunately, we've gotten some more really bad news, and of course it has to do with the starting rotation. Ernesto Comunez going to be out for 5 to 6 months with a torn labrum. So now, even though hopefully we will have Weiss back presently, losing both Comunez, who was slotted in as our number 3 starter, and Saldana, our number 1 starter for the rest of this season, certainly could have a pretty significant impact on our plans to try to win it all and repeat this year. Comunez 5-3 with a 3.38 ERA. You may remember he started out for us in the bullpen this year because he pitched only twice in spring training and had some injury issues there. So we started him out in long relief to stretch him out a little bit and work his way into shape. Moved back into the rotation at that point. Unfortunately, Dozer Comunez joins Jesus Saldana on the IL for the rest of this season. And that's not it as far as the bad news with the rotation. Mike Blumenshine, upper body injury, pending a diagnosis. He's 6-1 with a 1.90 ERA for us this year. And losing him out of the rotation would be absolutely devastating at this point, given the losses that we've already suffered this year to Saldana, Comunez, and Weiss. And one good piece of news, Blumenshine, just a mild abdominal strain, so he's going to be day-to-day for 5 days. Obviously, he'll have to push back his next start, but certainly could have been much more significant than that. And we've lost a couple in a row to Detroit now. Final game of the series in the Motor City tomorrow. Unfortunately, Kevin Carmichael, who, as we mentioned, has been filling in for us in the starting rotation, ended up getting suspended for 6 games, given all of the issues we are dealing with the health of our pitchers right now. Certainly not optimal, even if it just means he'll get pushed back a day or two in terms of his next start. And we've made it to the midway point of the season. Unfortunately, we had a really bad stretch at the end of the month of June into the beginning of July. Lost our last 4 games in the month of June, and then our first 2 in July. So a 6-game losing streak before, fortunately, we won the final game of a homestand against Colorado. So as we sit here at the midway evaluation point of the season, although 1 game past the technical midway point of the season, 49-33 record, although we have not been good with that 3-7 record in our last 10. Fortunately for us, the Angels have been even worse, 1-9 in their last 10. So we've got an 8-game lead on the division. That being said, with the struggles we've had recently, only a game and a half better than the Tigers for the best record in the American League. The White Sox, who were off to a monster start this year, have slipped back to the pack. Over in the National League, the Rockies and now the Phillies, who have won 5 in a row, are clearly the top 2 teams in baseball, the only teams with winning percentages of over 600, and both of those teams are over 650 in terms of their winning percentages. Looking at the leaderboard, not a lot going on for our Oakland Athletics. Federico Arriola, 11-3, leading the league with 11 wins. But other than that, nobody on the charts of the top 3 for our Oakland A's. Jackson Ferris, our former longtime starter, is second in the American League with 10 wins. And our old buddy, Sergio Palomares, 31 stolen bases, ranks second in the American League this year. But he is hitting just $164 for the Baltimore Orioles. And getting to the high-level midseason review, the 49-33 record, Mr. Fisher was expecting more for us and wants us to make a second-half push. I'd love the team to be playing a little bit better than we are right now and to have fewer injuries, certainly, but we are still up 8 games in the division, and we have the best record in the American League. Happy that we brought in Iwata, a Gold Glove winner, although if you remember, we signed Iwata before he had ever played a major league game. So just one of the quirks in terms of the owner goals, that the fact that he happened to win a Gold Glove long after we actually acquired him still makes our simpleton owner happy. And he's disappointed in our lack of improvement in extra inning games, and the always good advice to just try harder. That will fix everything. Thank you for that sage words of wisdom, Mr. Fisher. Taking a look at the team statistics as we sit here, have pulled the bullpen ERA down to 4.20, middle of the pack, ranking 8th at this point. Our 49-33 record is 2 below Pythagorean expectations. We were a bit better in June with a 15-11 record than we were in May. Off to a slow start here in July, but we did at least finally stop that 6-game losing streak last time around. Offense remains outstanding, first in the American League in runs scored, and top 5 in every offensive category, including a first-place ranking in many of them, 3rd in steals, 5th in base running. Pretty solid defense, 2nd in zone rating, 6th in defensive efficiency. And overall, we're 2nd in the league in runs allowed. Starters ERA still the best in the AL, despite all the injuries that we have suffered. And we're generally in the top 3 or 4 in most pitching categories in the American League. In fact, we're in the top 3 or 4 in all of the primary pitching categories in the American League, except for that bullpen ERA, where we have at least improved to middle of the pack. And clearly, as we think about what this team may be able to achieve this year, Saldana and Camunez, a couple of big starters being on the IL, certainly going to have an impact throughout the season and when we get to playoff time. Nelson Delgado, the youngster, also recovered from a brief injury, but he's had an ERA of close to 7 in very limited action for us this year. Part of the reason of putting him on the IL, we didn't think, as you can see, that he was going to be injured the entire time that he was there, but wanted to get someone healthy and well to help us when we were dealing with that suspension of Carmichael, which still has a couple of days left, and the other injury issues that obviously we've been dealing with. We've already checked in on what Chase Dora and Mike Gallick have done this year, and we also, early in this episode, or more recently in the episode actually, saw that Sergio Palomares is stealing bases well, but really not hitting well. But before we get into our team, it's certainly a good time to check in on what the franchise, Jake Ortega, has been doing this year for the New York Yankees. And looks like he's had some injury issues, played just 44 games for the Yankees so far, hitting .259 with 8 homers, 28 ribbies, and 166 at-bats. Also 8 for 8 on the base paths a year after leading the league in steals in his final season in Oakland. Putting up a 126 WRC plus and a 1.4 WAR. Looking at the fielding statistics, they're playing him every day in left field, basically. He's also played a little bit of center for them. Certainly could win a Gold Glove if he plays enough games out there this year with the skill set he has. But last year, when we were able to have him in the lineup for 149 games, we played him primarily at DH to try to keep him healthy given his age and his wrecked injury proneness. And the Yankees, particularly given the big money that they're paying him, $36.5 million a year for the next 4 years, decided it made sense for them to get some help from Ortega in the field as well, although it seems like it may have contributed to him missing nearly half of the games that they've played this far. And despite having the best record in the American League, fan interest has deteriorated a bit. We had been raising prices a bit over the course of the season, but with fan interest dropping a couple of points since the 99 that we were at the beginning of the season, attendance has started to slip a little bit below capacity recently, so had to pull ticket prices back just a little bit to hopefully continue getting as many people as possible into the seats, but more importantly, generating and maximizing our revenue. Taking a look at the pitching, we've already talked about Mr. Arriola, 11-3, 2.42 ERA, 3.2 WAR on the season. Former second-round draft pick is definitely our ace at this point with Saldana gone. He's a guy that is making the major league minimum this year, set to make the major league minimum next year. A player that we'd love to sign to a long-term contract, but he's always been looking for big-time money. Not horrible right now what he's looking for. Over the course of 8 years, he'd be looking for about $140 million. So we'll continue to think about bringing the 6'9", 195-pound right-hander and locking him up for the longer term. But right now, probably not on the top of our list of things to do. Doug Weiss, good to have him back. 0-1. That was actually in Las Vegas. 1-1 here in Oakland for us with an ERA of close to 5. So I don't think his first couple starts back at the major league level have been particularly good. Yeah, you can see definitely not great. Went 5 innings in each of those first 2 starts back, but he's allowed 16 hits, 8 runs, and 2 home runs over the 10 innings that he's pitched. Hopefully he'll get things straightened out in the not too distant future. Mike Blumenshine, been dealing with little injuries here and there this season, but still 6-2 with a 2.43 ERA. Dave Baumler, struggling this year. We've talked in the past how we've at times kept him in the rotation simply because of that captain personality. Given the attrition that we've had in the rotation this year, pretty hard to imagine that he's not going to be our number 4 or number 5 starter all season long. But only 2-7 with a 5.53 ERA this year, and barely above replacement level. So looking at his ratings and what we think he is and what he has been in the past, definitely a disappointing start to the season from Baumler. Kevin Carmichael, as we mentioned, has been starting for us recently due to the injuries. 2-1 with an ERA in the mid-3s. Taking a deeper look into his pitching splits for the year, and as a starter, 1-1 with a 3.33 ERA, barely going 4 innings a start, but he has been reasonably effective in the limited innings that he's been able to give us out of the rotation. Chuck Huntley, our closer, definitely a tenuous hold on that role for him at this point. He's lost 4 games on the season. He's had 8 meltdowns and an ERA of close to 6. Been a win below replacement level. Does have 18 saves, but ERA has climbed almost 3 runs from where it was a year ago, and certainly hoping for a better performance from Huntley going forward. Eric Keach, the rookie, has done a nice job for us. 2.21 ERA over 40 2/3 innings. Struck out more than a batter per inning, and he's got a WAR of 0.7 over the first half season of his major league career. Jonathan Shearer, a little bit of a disappointing year for him after having ERAs in the 2s the last couple of years. ERA of over 4 this year for Shearer. Luis Aguayo, the left-hander with a nasty fastball and slider combo that came up late last year, struck out 10 in 4 2/3 innings. Not quite the same rate of strikeouts this year, 38 over 34 2/3 innings. Still has been reasonably effective for us, but with the fact he's given up 7 home runs among the 35 hits that he's allowed, has basically been a replacement level pitcher for us out of the bullpen. Wilson Rangel, as we talked about at the start of the episode, not having the most impressive rookie year, has gotten the ERA down to 5.56, though. Certainly not a great number by any stretch of the imagination. But after that 12.91 ERA that he had in the month of April, he's been around 3 in both May and June. Didn't pitch well in 2 outings this month, but who has on this staff as we finished off that 6-game losing streak with 2 losses to begin the month of July. Jake Mendick, the lefty who's wrecked physically even though he's only 27 years old, spent some time on the IL and did a brief rehab stint in AAA for us. He's been okay, half a win above replacement level with an ERA in the mid-4s. Certainly not ideal, but not our biggest problem either. Joe Heilman, the youngster who's the number 39 prospect in baseball, 3.98 ERA with 10.5 strikeouts per 9 innings over the first 31 2/3 innings of his major league career. That said, he's been a bit below replacement level. And then Chad Evans, who's been up and down a couple times this year, a 6.52 ERA over 19 1/3 innings at the major league level, allowed 25 hits and allowing a 3.67 BABIP. His SIERA is materially better than his ERA, so hoping that perhaps he's gotten a bit unlucky. Would love to see the number 42 prospect in baseball pitch better out of the pen going forward, especially with the significant injury issues we're dealing with on our pitching staff at this point. All in all, when I think about where we are here at the midway point of the season, second in the American League in runs allowed, and Weiss has started only 5 games for us, and both Saldana and Camuñez are lost for the season at this point. Certainly can't complain about where we are statistically. The hope is that we'll end up first or second in the American League in runs allowed when all is said and done. hopefully get somewhat better performance out of our bullpen over these next 3 months of the season. Seems like things are trending in a somewhat better direction, but there are certainly some issues that we're going to continue to monitor and perhaps make some changes before our next episode in the roles and the usage of some of our pitchers. Turning now to our everyday players who have combined to deliver the most runs in the American League this year. Jorge Mendoza, the outstanding catcher, likely playing his final year with us here in Oakland, hitting .276, 8 homers and 36 ribbies for us. He's also walked 43 times, so he's put up a 140 WRC plus and a 3.2 WAR. A really good combination of well above average defense behind the plate with one of the best bats for a catcher in the American League. So happy to have Mendoza, who was last year's ALCS and World Series MVP, behind the plate for us. Hidetaka Ogata is his backup, but with Jonah Richards on the team, Ogata getting very limited playing time, started only 6 games, played in only 11 over the first half of the season. Outstanding defensive catcher, but hitting just a .174 with 4 hits in 23 at-bats. I guess the positive thing is that one of those 4 hits does happen to be a home run. Luis Godina, first base DHman who had an outstanding result in the development lab this past offseason with his home run power, definitely demonstrating it after 12 homers and 412 at-bats as a rookie last year. Already has 22 homers and 60 ribbies in just 331 at-bats this year, hitting .290, putting up a 140 WRC plus for us and a 2.3 WAR. Jonah Richards, not quite as good as Godina this year. The batting average has dipped to .255, does have 17 homers, 50 ribbies, and 274 at-bats. 130 WRC plus and a 1.5 WAR. Like Godina, he's spending most of his time at first base and DH this year, and honestly, we're DHing Richards more often than not, given that we've got Mendoza behind the plate to ensure that Richards' bat is in the lineup as much as possible. That being said, Richards has played 20 games at first base, and he started 10 games behind the plate. He is a fine defensive catcher, and with the big improvement he had this past offseason in the development lab to his glove as well as his bat, his glove is basically as good as Mendoza's is right now. Hoping that maybe we get a little more offensively out of Mr. Richards over the second half of the season, but he's still on pace for 34 homers and 100 ribbies, so we can't complain too much about what he's doing in his first full major league season. Amare Alcindor back into a utility infielder role for us after he started much of April when Iwata was injured, hitting just .226 with a 75 WRC plus. We sign, as those of you who have followed us closely over the years, as many players as we can to extensions when they're young, particularly if we think they're going to be important players for us. Alcindor, unfortunately, after some pretty green shoots in the early stages of his career and a profile that looks very versatile defensively with a solid major league bat, just really hasn't developed the way we would have hoped. 88 WRC plus over the course of his career, and he's going to start making some real money over the next few years. If he remains in a utility role for us, could be someone that we need to look to move on from in the not too distant future to hopefully use that salary that will be dedicated to Alcindor in a few years more efficiently. Chisen Iwata, bounced back from the injury that kept him out of the first month of the season, hitting .288, 16 doubles, 4 triples, 6 home runs, 9 of 10 on the base path, stealing bases for us. Put up a 134 WRC plus for us this year and a 2.3 WAR. So having a very similar season to his Rookie of the Year season from last year, although not driving in as many runs or scoring as many runs as he did for us a year ago, but still time for that to change since he is hitting leadoff for us. Third baseman Juan Pimentel, last year's American League Most Valuable Player, 2 years ago was the AL Rookie of the Year. By his standards, having an off season, the batting average is dipped to .281 after he hit well over .300 over the first year and a half plus of his career. 12 homers and 50 ribbies, 114 WRC plus, 2.4 WAR. Certainly a very good major league season for Pimentel, but not the level that we've come to expect from him after he put up a 163 WRC plus in his Rookie of the Year season and a 143 WRC plus in his MVP season a year ago. And another guy who's not delivering the way that he has in the past for us is Alejandro Landin, the shortstop. At this point, looks like a pretty average major league hitting profile. Still not bad value, getting paid $5 million, and we've got a team option for him next year at $5 million. But the offense has definitely fallen off to league average with a 100 OPS plus and a 98 WRC plus, 9 homers and 39 ribbies to go with a 241 batting average this year. Not inconceivable if we make a lot of moves as we get closer to next season that Landin could maybe end up in a utility role next year with the salary that he's making, particularly if we did move on from Alcindor and maybe find someone else who could play shortstop for us, but there's not a obvious high-quality solution. So very happy with the catchers and overall like our infield when you've got a guy like Amari Alcindor as your primary utility infielder. Certainly could do much worse than that. The hope is that guys like Landin and Pimentel that aren't hitting quite as well as we've become accustomed to them hitting perhaps get a bit better over the second half of the season. Last but not least, we'll turn our attention to our outfielders. Darnell Selvey, former first-round pick from 2035, having another nice season for us. 293 average, 17 doubles, 12 homers, and 39 ribbies. Put up a 140 WRC plus for us and a 2.3 WAR through the first half of the season. He has been banged up a bit from time to time, played just 65 of the 82 games that we've had scheduled thus far. Our other corner outfield is Arturo Uresti, and he's having a bit of a disappointing year thus far, but Uresti has tended to, in the past, kind of start a bit slow over the first half of the year and perform better in the second half of the season. Certainly would hope that we'd get something similar to that this year. Batting average 237, 12 homers and 47 ribbies. Walked only 35 times through the first half of this year after leading the American League in walks a year ago. So hopefully the eye will get a little more nuanced and discriminating over the second half of the season, and he'll be able to get on base more often. 105 WRC plus, 105 OPS plus, 100 WRC plus, and a 1.5 WAR for Uresti. He's been fine, but certainly expecting a bit more from him offensively with his career 122 WRC plus. Certainly a season when he's 28 years old, should basically be in the prime of his career, and he's only been a league average offensive player, is definitely a bit of a disappointment. We've had a bunch of guys playing center field for us at times. The least action has gone to Joe Harmon, who's really become a fifth outfielder for us this year, hitting .255 in 94 at-bats, 86 WRC plus, 3 for 3 stealing bases. He's a good defensive player, good influence in the clubhouse, solid on the base paths with a respectable bat, really nice fifth outfielder, but probably in a perfect world not someone we want to be starting in center field every day. And with only 23 starts on the season, we certainly have not been doing that. Jesus Aguilar, the left-hand hitting rookie center fielder, got the batting average up to .287 in 150 at-bats. Not a ton of power with 6 doubles, a triple, and only 1 home run. But he still put up a 91 WRC plus and a WAR of close to 1 for us, the 24-year-old. Similar to Harmon, good on the base paths, good defensively, generally positive influence in the clubhouse. A respectable major league bat, but not a particularly exciting major league bat. And the guy that we're hoping develops into an exciting major league bat is Bobby Armstrong, who we picked up in a big trade with the Orioles last November. He has, over time, become our everyday center fielder, hitting only .230 in 196 at-bats. But he does make things happen. 11 doubles, 2 triples, 5 home runs. He's stolen 17 bases for us in 20 attempts. The 85 WRC plus, not exactly what we're hoping for, particularly when we look at his batting profile. We think he can definitely be an above-average offensive player. Still has put up a 1.2 WAR for us, and given that we think there's room for both his batting eye, his home run power, his gap power, and his contact, specifically his avoid strikeouts, to improve. Going to try to ensure that he gets the majority of the playing time over Aguilar and Harmon in center field over the second half of this season. Certainly Armstrong is the least talented overall package defensively of those three, so Aguilar and Harmon hopefully will still get some opportunities to come in as a defensive substitute from time to time in the late innings, but want to ensure that when this season is over, hopefully Armstrong has at least 450 or so at-bats at the major league level, which, given that he was in a platoon situation early in the season, and he's started only 57 of our first 82 games and already has close to 200 at-bats, if we keep him healthy, should be able to get him well over that 400 number, playing him hopefully just about every day over the second half of this season. So if we think about a position where we're weak on paper on this roster, it probably still is center field. But given that we think Armstrong can continue getting better, and we've got some pretty good guys in Aguilar and Harmon to get into the mix with him, don't necessarily feel like we have to be desperate to do anything to improve that position. But before we do finish things off, we'll at least take a look at the players who are on the trade block at this point. Not really any impact pitchers out there. The reliever Nate West, a right-hander, is a solid major league pitcher who could either start or relieve, and he's done both with the Twins this year. Don't see him being an impact player, but if we had another injury to the rotation and we just needed somebody to eat up some innings for us, West probably could fill that role. Camden Reisinger, former member of our team, now with the Kansas City Royals, also on the trade block. Unlikely that we'd be looking to add a 32-year-old who's fragile physically and also reunite with someone who's disruptive in the locker room. And last year at this time, when we were thinking about making a trade for a center fielder to help us out that we never actually did, there were a lot of pretty good defensive center fielders with interesting bats available on the trade block. Not quite the situation this year, but it is only July 5th, and just because someone's not on the trade block doesn't mean that their team won't be willing to trade them away. Second baseman Forrest Maldrum Macoun is the top everyday player available. Really good speed and a good contact hitter, but he's almost 36 years old, wrecked physically, not all that special defensively. Has put up a 137 WRC plus for the Dodgers this year, but probably not enough of an impact player to continue bringing him on board, or to consider bringing him on board. Alejandro Castaneda, right fielder, pretty interesting left-handed bat. 110 WRC plus this year, the same as he did a year ago, but don't see him being a real big upgrade over either Selvey or Uresti as a corner outfielder. Would argue that he's not an upgrade over either of them at this point, particularly given his 34-year-old age and his big contract, and not really a guy that we'd want to play in center field. So not a lot of obvious answers for us there. Amari Flagger, shortstop, who is really good defensively. The bat, not even quite what we have with Landine at this point. In the final year of his contract, making $13 million. Definitely, with his profile, looks like he would be a bit better defensively than Landine. But the bat, as I said, not quite as good as Landine's. He's a right-handed hitter as opposed to the switch hitter that Landine is. And with a 77 WRC plus this season and a career mark of 91, definitely hasn't been the offensive player that Landine has been, making $13 million. Probably not a perfect fit for us. So I don't think there's anything really obvious for us to pursue in the trade market. Guess I might as well look at Andy Couch as well. Outspoken personality, banged up, making $35 million, and he's also signed for next season. Solid major league bat, solid glove, given what he's making, given his age, given that he's fragile physically. Don't necessarily, and that we'd also have to probably pay something significant to bring him on board. Don't necessarily see Mr. Couch being an answer for us either. But fortunately, at 49 and 33, we don't have to answer a lot of questions. Certainly disappointing that we're going to be missing a couple of our starters, particularly in the playoffs, as we try to guide this team to a repeat. But that being said, with all the injury issues, all the ups and downs, still have the best record in the AL as we sit here in early July, and expecting that we can ultimately hold on to this division lead that we have. Not really saying a lot given that we're the only team above 500 in the division right now. Hopefully position ourselves to have a first round bye, home field advantage throughout the American League playoffs, and if we're fortunate enough to get to a World Series, let the chips fall where they may. We'll certainly continue to explore the trade market over the next close to 4 weeks before we get to the end of July, but not necessarily anticipating that we're going to do anything rash. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.